statement came, and I showed in the statement $2,000. And I said to my son, what is going on? We have $2,000, and it's only $2,000. What happened? He says, asthma. Anyway, tonight I'll give you a lesson of aerodynamics and how an aeroplane flies. You might think, how does that relate to faith, religion, next. So, let's start with this. And I want your critical thinking. I want you to think. Okay? Think. This is an aeroplane. Okay? Okay. Now, can you tell me how many forces and what forces apply to flying? So, in order an aeroplane to fly, what forces apply?
Lift, drag, thrust, and blade.
Okay, so we have one forward, which is called thrust. Okay? Another one, which is called
Drag. Drag.
another one. What is this? Lift. Okay? And another one, down. Okay? That is the weight of the aeroplane. Okay? Now, can you give me the equation of how this aeroplane will fly? This is the propeller. Okay? The propeller causes thrust. So pushes the aeroplane forward. Okay? But there is a drag as well. The drag is caused by what? Huh? Resistance of the air. Okay? Then we have the weight that pulls the aeroplane down. The law of weight. Okay? Then, in order the aeroplane to fly, it has to lift, it has to go up. So, give me the equation. So, in order the aeroplane to fly, the thrust plus the lift should be greater than the drag and the weight. Right? By this, the aeroplane will fly. Now, it will not fly unless there is a lift. How the lift is taken place? How? The shape of the wing, which is like this. Okay? Here goes like this, the other goes like this, and creates a lift. The wider the wing is, the bigger the lift is. But anyway, you might think, why are you saying this to us? Huh? Why? Why? Okay. Open your Bible then. Matthew 18 chapter, 21 verse. And you will see onwards. Matthew 21 verse. 18 chapter, verse 21 until the end, the beginning of the 19th chapter. Guys, would you like to come forward? Come closer here. Come closer. You're too far away. Come. sinned against me, and I forgive him up to 7 times. Jesus said to him, I do not say to you up to 7 times, but up to 70 times 7. Therefore, the reign of heaven is like a certain king who wanted to settle accounts with his servants. And when he had begun to settle accounts, the reckoning, one was brought to him who owed him 10,000 talents. But as he was not able to pay, his master commanded that he be sold with his wife and children and all that he had, and that payment be made. The servant therefore fell down before him, saying, Master, have patience with me, and I will pay you back, pay you all. Then the master of that servant was moved with compassion, released him, and forgave him the debt. But that servant went out and found one of his fellow servants, who owed him 100 denarii. Now the comparison with 10,000 talents with 100 denarii is this. 10,000 talents is the wage for 20 years. Wages for 20 years. 100 denarii is a couple of weeks' wages. That's the comparison, the difference. And he laid hands on him and took him by the throat, saying, Pay me what you owe. So his fellow servant fell down at his feet and begged him, saying, Have patience with me, and I will pay you all. And he would not, but went and threw him into prison till he should pay the debt. So when his fellow servants saw what had been done, they were very grieved, very distressed, and came and told their master all that had been done. Then his master, after he called him, said to him, You wicked servant, I forgave you all that debt because you begged me. Should you not also have had compassion on your fellow servant, just as I had pity on you? And his master was angry and delivered him to the torturers until he should pay all that was due to him. So my heavenly Father also will do to you if each of you from his heart does not forgive his brother his trespasses. So what is this about, this parable? What is that about? It's about forgiveness, right? Huh? Matthew 18 chapter, 21 verse, till the end. Till the beginning of 19. So, Peter and Jesus took the opportunity and said this parable because Peter asked him, how many times should I forgive my brother, my fellow, if he commits something and, hurts me? Okay. How many times? 7 times? Why is it 7 times? Because the law of Moses said that up to 7 times you will forgive someone if he does something to you. Okay? If he sins against or trespasses against you. Up to 7 times. After 7 times, no more forgiveness. And Jesus says, I do not say you 7 times, but 7 times 70 times. That is 70 times 7, 409. Okay? With this expression, he wants to say as many times as you want. Immeasurable. And he took this opportunity because of that question of Peter, and he said this parable. And this is a parable, which means that it is a story that wants us to teach something to us. Okay? Now, what is the main point of the story? And forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Okay? So, it is about us and God. Okay? This is just a parable with a scenario, okay, a story. But the story is about God and us. We fall and we trespass how many times a day? Immeasurable times. As soon as we seek forgiveness, God forgives. And we start again, afresh. Clean slate. And again, and again. Then in another gospel says, therefore be compassionate among you, as your Father in heaven is compassionate and forgiving with you. So Jesus applies the forgiveness, love, and grace of God onto us to continually sin. Then He forgives and forgives and forgives immeasurable times. What do we do? Do we forgive? God forgives and forgets. We forgive, but we not forget. Okay? We don't forget. We hold it. For the second time, third time. Okay? Like the laws. Like the law 7 times. But forgive you once, twice, thrice, and after that, no more. No more. Hallelujah. Okay. Now, let's say we don't forgive. What happens to us when we don't forgive someone or something? What happens to us? Forgive, we are not forgiving. Psychologically, what happens to us? Physically and psychologically, what happens to us? Huh? We remain with our resentment. What does resentment do? Physically, in our body, in our health, what does it do? Your palpitations, they go up, your pressure goes up, and the result is what? If you have a blockage, you're done. Okay, you're done. So, health-wise, it's not healthy not to forgive. Okay? There is a Greek saying that says, forgive in advance. Προχώρα. Συγχώρα και προχώρα. Don't remain where you were. When you don't forgive and have grudges against someone for something, one worldly case, all our cases, and our differences have a worldly nature. Okay? And we don't forgive and remember always that what other people do have done to us by thinking, who do you have? The other or yourself? Yourself. So not healthy. It's not healthy. Okay? I remember many years ago, decades ago, when someone owed money to someone else and couldn't pay, then usually they put them to prison. Okay? Exactly what the parable says. Okay? Now, when someone is put to prison, is thrown to prison, can he pay his debt? So, does it profit you to put someone into prison so that he doesn't pay you the debt? You better negotiate. Okay? Negotiate. Okay? You don't have to pay me the big amount? Okay. Let's cut it in pieces. Okay? In installments. You will be able to pay in installments. And you don't need to go to prison, or you don't need to have grudges and hatred against. Now, if you have hatred, grudges, and resentment, do you progress spiritually? Why? Because grudges, hatred, resentment is like the drug and the weight. It pulls you down. If these two are bigger than this, you don't go up. You go down. Did you see the comparison? You understand the comparison? So, your compassion and goodness should be greater than the drug and the weight, so that you are lifted up. When you have resentment and you come to church in order to pray, and you hear the priest say, "In peace let us pray to the Lord." What peace? What peace? From the peace from above and for the salvation of our souls, let us pray to the Lord. What peace? You don't have peace. If you don't have peace, you can't reconcile with your Creator. You can't pray. Your mind wanders during the worship. Wanders. Goes who knows where. Probably goes to the people who owe you money or have done something to you. And you don't pray. You don't pray. You are not lifted up. You are stuck down. So, what is the healthiest thing to do? Let go and advance and walk. Go forward. Don't remain even steady or going backwards. It doesn't pay. It's not good for you. Okay? You might think, okay, if someone has done without judgment, then he has done it many times. Look, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Huh? Yes, ma'am. Forgiven and advance. See, the little one. From the mouth of babies. Oh, yes. That's it. That doesn't mean that you have to give hugs and kisses with the person. Okay? You keep a distance. If his input is negative into your life, keep the distance. A strict distance. But doesn't mean that you have to hate him, because hatred is something that tortures your heart. Doesn't torture the other. The other might not know it, even not know it. Okay? But it tortures you. So why you torture yourself? Okay? So this is a battle. Alright? Now, would you like to proceed with the 19th chapter? 19th chapter is a very interesting chapter. You know why? Because it speaks about divorce. Rather, it doesn't speak of divorce. Divorce is a contemporary term. Doesn't say anything about divorce. We call it divorce. Okay? It's not divorce. Because the original text doesn't speak about divorce. The translation speaks about divorce, but the translation, being a mistranslation, gives you another perspective. We'll tell you. Okay, let's study it and you will see. Laugh. Divorce is a contemporary terminology, which means what? Two people who were married, okay, decide to separate. Okay? Both of them decide to separate. Okay? The original text doesn't speak about this. Why it doesn't speak about this, and why your translation speaks about divorce? Why? Because the translators didn't take in account the biblical interpretation of the specific reference that speaks about this. And the specific reference was Deuteronomy 24, chapter 1, 2. So the problem is not with the original text, but it is with the translation. And the translation gives you another perspective, a perspective of today's understanding. not 2,500 years ago. Because here, the original text doesn't speak about today, it speaks about those times, the Old Testament times. And in the Old Testament times, the woman didn't have any rights. The woman could not separate her husband. The husband could do that to his wife. Okay? And I will explain you how it is, and I'll give you the specific words of the original text. But let's read the translation first, so we have an idea. And I will tell you the differences. Now it came to pass when Jesus had finished these sayings that he departed from Galilee and came to the region of Judea beyond the Jordan. And great multitudes followed him, and he healed them there. The Pharisees also came to him, testing him. Pay attention to the context, okay? So, the Pharisees came and testing him, said to him, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for just any reason? Okay. Before we proceed, we have to examine who were those who came to Jesus to test him. Okay? Second, how many schools of thought during the times of Jesus were in Israel about divorce? How many schools of thought? What did they support? What idea did they support? Second, the Hebrew language. Third, Hebrew language. So we have Pharisees with how many schools of thought they were during the times of Jesus and after, and the Hebrew language. Why? Because Matthew's Gospel, as well as Mark's Gospel, originally were not written in Greek. They were written in Hebrew. So if we want to be faithful with the original text, we have to revert from Greek into Hebrew and see how the Hebrew wording is, where this applies scripturally into another scriptural reference, and then draw conclusions. Because from one language to another language, there are always differences in translation. And one mistranslation leads you to a misinterpretation from understanding. You understand? Okay. So, who were the Pharisees? Who are the Pharisees?
The spiritual leaders at the time?
The spiritual leaders of Israel. Pirush in Hebrew is the Pharisee. Pirushim are the Pharisees, plural number. Okay? Now, the Pharisees. Which school of thoughts they belong to? Which were the schools of thought about divorce, and what did they try to interpret from the scriptures? There were two schools. The school of Hillel and the school of Shammai. The school of Hillel was taking literally Deuteronomy 24 chapter 1-2. Open your Bibles, your Testament, your Old Testament. Then find Deuteronomy 24 chapter 1-2 verses. Deuteronomy is the last book of Torah. 24 chapter 1-2. Deuteronomy That's one, two. Did you find it? Who would like to read? Who would like to read? Anyone? Nobody likes to read? Why? You hear your voice. Okay, I will read it. It says, when a man takes a wife and marries her, and it happens that she finds no favor in his eyes because he has found some uncleanness, some inappropriate thing in her, then he writes her a certificate of divorce in inverted commas. Put this in inverted commas because divorce is a contemporary word. Okay, it was not used back then. It's our word, not theirs. Puts it in her hand and sends her out of his house, and when she has departed from his house and goes and becomes another man's wife, if the later husband detests her and writes her a certificate of divorce, put it in her hand and sends her out of his house, or if the later husband dies, and blah, 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 blah. Okay? So, let's say more practically, so that we understand. Let's say I married a wife, I take a wife, okay? And one day, in the morning when she wakes up, I don't like something that she's done. The breath stinks, or whatever, okay? And I'm getting hungry, I write a certificate of separation, of putting her away, dismissing her, I give it to her hand, and the second day, she packs up what she has, and clothes, and goes away, goes to her father's house. Okay? Two things. It was too easy. Okay? Why? Because the woman didn't have any rights. The husband could get rid of her any time when he wanted. Okay? And the next day, he could marry. The next day. And then how many years need to pass after we get divorced? A year. Okay? After separation, a year, we can marry today. But back then, it was the next day. So easy. All right, but in order to have another woman marry another woman next day, what does that mean? Huh? Already have it. Yeah, already have it. In secret. In secret. And he was trying to find an excuse, reason, to get rid of his wife. With ease. Okay? Now, the school of Hillel supported literally these verses. Literally. The Pharisees who came to Jesus belonged to the school of Hillel. That's why they came testing him. They wanted to test him about what? About what? If he had fidelity to the law, as they did. If there were others from the school of Shammai, they would think it. They would find, reason, investigate why you want to separate. Why? Find all the evidence. But the school of Hillel, the Pharisees, quick, get rid of her, and then marry another one. So easy. Okay? Now, just after these verses, you see what Jesus says. I'll read all of it, and so you understand. Okay? said, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for just any reason? Any reason? And he answered and said to them, have you not read that he who made them at the beginning made them male and female, and said, for this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So then they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no man separate. Divorce or separation is not the will of God. It's not the will of God. Okay? But why they say to him, why then did Moses command to give a certificate of divorce and to put her away? Now, instead of the word divorce, the original text doesn't say divorce. It uses the verb apolio, which means put away, dismiss, dioknos. Okay? A man dismissed his wife, got rid of his wife. They didn't divorce. They didn't agree to divorce. Okay? So divorce is a contemporary word. The original text doesn't speak about divorce. It speaks about ridding of the woman, dismissing the woman, okay, putting away the woman. He said to them, Moses, because of the hardness of your hearts, permitted you to put away your wives, but from the beginning it was not so. And I say to you, whoever puts away his wife, except for sexual immorality, and marries another, commits adultery. And whoever marries her who is divorced commits adultery. Okay? Now, let's go to 10th chapter of Mark and see what Mark says about this. The Pharisees, 10th chapter, verse 2. The Pharisees came and asked him, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife? Testing him. And he answered and said to them, what did Moses command you? They said, Moses permitted a man to write a certificate of divorce, or get rid of him, okay, putting away his wife, and to dismiss him. And Jesus answered and said to them, because of the hardness of your heart, he wrote you this precept. But from the beginning of the creation, God made them male and female. For this reason a man shall leave his father and mother, and he joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So then they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let not man separate. In the house his disciples also asked him again about this same matter. So he said to them, whoever divorces his wife and marries another commits adultery against her. And if a woman divorces her husband and marries another, she commits adultery. What do you notice about this verse? What do you notice? It says, when a man divorces his wife and marries another, he commits adultery. And if a woman divorces her husband and marries another, she commits adultery. How do you get that? How do you get that? How do you perceive that? Tell me something. In the church, in one Sunday, okay, during our worship, how many people might be there? About 300 people? How many divorced and never became are there? Actually, we had, here in Australia, we had 43% of divorces. In the last month that I was in Calinos, I had good experiences, but some bad ones as well. Father Sabas, who was in the office of marriages and divorces, told me that we do 20 weddings and 45 divorces. What? 45 divorces. And those divorcees would come again and marry. And the church would marry them and have them in communion. If the church does this, it preaches the words of Christ clear enough that we see goes there. No? What do you think?
It's going to be harsh.
Huh?
In today's world. So what? You've got to be violent.
This is another thing. Doesn't say if a man is violent.
But people don't
If a man divorces his wife or gets rid of his wife, and marries another, he commits adultery. And if a woman divorces her husband and marries another, she commits adultery.
But that's only from one of the schools we said, and the other
No,
school.
it doesn't say anything about this. Christ says he speaks generally. It's very general. It's a general statement. Okay?
What is a man born? Could be a woman.
Doesn't say about the reasons and causes.
That's fine.
It says, if a man divorces his wife and marries another, he commits adultery. And if a woman divorces her husband and marries another man, she commits adultery.
Is that if they marry straight away?
Pay attention to the words of Christ. Pay attention. Okay? I said before few things. Think of it. You forgot them. You already forgot them. 5 minutes. Man had the right to divorce his wife. But Christ says here, if a woman divorces her husband and marries another, she commits adultery. How is that? The woman didn't have any rights to divorce her husband. Only the husband had the right to divorce his wife. Why Christ says here, if a woman divorces, so did the woman have the right to divorce her husband? That was against the law.
She didn't have the right, according to the Bible.
How? Back then, the woman didn't have rights. The woman didn't have rights. You women didn't have rights until the last century.
That was man-made. By Moses' book, that we didn't have rights, not by God.
But the law was very, yes.
Yes, but Israel were going by the law of Moses. They didn't know any other law. They went by the law of Moses. That's why Christ says, what does Moses command you? The law of Moses. And these Pharisees who came to test Jesus, they came purposely to test him if he has fidelity to the law, if he is faithful to the law. Why? Because they were expecting him to say something that was against the law of Moses, so that they get back and take it to the court and condemn him. That's going against the law of Moses. But Christ says here, if a woman divorces her husband and marries another, she commits adultery. How come?
Is it because we're not talking about the word divorce as in the term we know now, what it used to be, which is leave, as if the woman leaves?
No. No. Listen, we have a very bad idea about the Pharisees, okay? Very bad. Very bad. And Christ rebuked them times, okay? Especially after the 19th chapter when he was in Jerusalem before his passion. They came to him and gave divorce, okay? He called them about 17 times hypocrites. If he would say all these things to us, we would crucify him. And they did. Because they took it, in their heart. Because they were hypocrites. But they didn't do all the time bad things. They were the legislators of Israel. And Jesus recognized the legislative power because he said, in the throne of Moses, in the seat of Moses, the Pharisees sat. Whatever they say to you to do, do it. Whatever they do, don't do it because they are hypocrites. They say and they don't do. Okay? So he rebuked them for their hypocrisy, not for the laws that they wrote, the legislated. And they legislated two things that not even the Christian church until the last century didn't legislate. Because you women didn't have any rights essentially. You could not vote. And your witnessing in court, it was not valid. So the Pharisees were pioneers for the rights of the women. Do you know what they legislated? They legislated that the woman must have rights. And they gave her rights as the husband could divorce her, she could divorce him as well. So if he didn't have a good life with a violent husband, she could go to the judges. She reported her life, miserable life, next to the violent and careless husband, and they would write the certificate of divorce. They would go to the husband and say to him, sign it. And he signed it. She would get it and go and marry legally. They did another thing. You know the dowry that people gave, usually the women would give dowry to the husband when they married, okay? The Pharisees legislated that the husband, in case he divorces his wife, had not the right to take the dowry of his wife and spend it and have it for himself. When he divorced his wife, he had to give all the dowry back to his wife so that she lived with him. Okay? These two things that were abused until the last century in the Western and Eastern world. In the Eastern world, in South Asian countries, still, these habits, these customs exist. So, that's why Christ says, and if a woman divorces her husband and marries another, she commits adultery. But, since the woman rightfully and legally had the divorce and would marry another man, why she would commit adultery? Why? Especially if the divorce was not her fault. Okay? If her husband was cheating her and she saw the divorce and got it and married another man, she would not commit adultery. So why Jesus says she commits adultery if she marries another man, and if the man marries another woman? What is the problem here? Huh? It's very contradictory, isn't it? It's mind-boggling. But it is not. Now tell me, the word "and" grammatically, what it is, what part of the word it is. Do you know there's a conjunction? Huh? How many parts the word has? 10 parts. You think you do grammar at school? No? Okay, conjunction are the words that conjoin two phrases or two words. Okay? And this conjunction is and. And. If a man divorces his wife and marries another, that is called conjunction. Okay? In Hebrew, that conjunction is ve. It doesn't mean and always. It means in order to or to. Now, read the sentence, the phrase, with this translation and see how it is. If a man divorces his wife in order to marry another, commits adultery. And if a woman divorces her husband in order to marry another man, commits adultery. Meaning what?
Or make it easy.
So it was pre-planned, okay? Pre-planned. And that pre-planation relates to adultery. Okay? Well, no, you're adultery. You have another one. You're adultery. Okay? You can't escape. You're adultery. And also relates to Deuteronomy 24:1-2, as it was explained by the school of today. Okay? Who gave him right to do whatever they like. Okay? So, do you see how it is now? With this translation and interpretation, the conjunction and in Hebrew ve is translated and interpreted in Exodus 7, 8, and 9 chapters. Many times. We find it many times. Okay? When God sent Moses to Pharaoh to tell him to let the people go, he said to him, let my people go in order to worship me in the desert. That in order to is the conjunction the. Understand? So the whole interpretation, the whole text, it's another meaning. Christ knew what the Pharisees were, which school they belonged to, how they interpreted Deuteronomy 24:1-2, and if you have Bibles that have references, immediately where it says, the Pharisees approached him and asked him about divorce, the reference that will give you is Deuteronomy 24:1-2. If your Bible says references, I don't know, do they? Do they say Deuteronomy 24:1-2? Okay. Now, it's explained. So here it is about intention, pre-planning. It doesn't speak about divorce. Divorce is a contemporary terminology. The word instead of divorce that the original text uses is apolio, apolisis, which means dismiss, put away. So instead of there that it says, whoever divorces his wife and marries another should say, whoever puts away his wife and marries another. Okay? And if a woman puts away her husband and marries another. So it's not about divorcing, it's about dismissing. Διώξιμο. Διώκουμε τις γυναίκες τους οι άντρες τώρα. Τις διώκουμε. It's about dismiss. It's not about divorce. But see, one little mistranslation of the word, it gives you another perspective, and it makes translation, what? Unsuccessful and not happy. Not happy. It's anachronistic. Anachronism is a phenomenon that if you study in university and you become anachronistic, you get 0 marks. You know that? You get 0 marks. Because you're judging the events and cases of the past with today's criteria. They don't apply. You have to go back to 2,000 years back and see how people understood these concepts, so that we are faithful to the understanding of the people back then, not of today's mistranslation and misunderstanding. Okay? Any questions? No questions? In the heart of Jesus, in the heart of God, divorce is not good. Okay? But it's granted because of the weakness of man. Of the weakness. Okay? Marriage is an institution that two people join together their lives in order not to grow individually, but to grow together. How do we grow together? Have you been in an Orthodox wedding? Have you been? What did you see? Whatever you see is not Greek. Number one, it's not Greek. There is nothing Greek in a wedding. There is nothing Greek in a baptism. There is nothing Greek in what we do. Everything is Jewish. Okay? Everything is Jewish. What did you observe? What did you notice? You are in a wedding. You come. You invite. With the Stefan.
Well, that's what it is.
Okay, we have the crowns, all right? Okay, the crowns. Okay, the crowns. Who do we crown? What? Who do people crown? Yeah? Who do people crown? Kings and queens? Who else? Athletes. The athletes, they put a crown on their head. Okay, because they won. Okay? Athlete. Now, athlete. Is that an English word? What word is that? It's a Greek word. Okay? It originates from the verb tlau. Do you know what tlau means? I endure. Means I endure. So an athlete is someone who endures. He doesn't, surrender with the first difficulty and runs away, but he stays and fights and endures. So the first message that we get from that crowning is like saying to the bride and the groom, you have to learn to endure. Okay? Endure what? The difficulties of life. You don't run away, from the first difficulty that comes, but you stay and fight and you endure. Okay? Who else do we crown in the church? You see some people who are crowned. Who are they? The saints. Okay? The ivy. We crown every saint that you see with the icons, they have a crown of glory. Okay? Now, the word hagios. Do you know why I say hagios and not agios? Eh? Because the word agios, which is saint or holy, it takes this little mark here, this one. This equivalently is with the word, with the letter H. So it's hagios. As we say Helen or Hellenic, okay? That Helen, the word Helen, Hellenic, that's Hellenic. It takes this mark, and this is the word H. So we say Hellenic, okay? So the word agios comes from the word damos. Damos. And from the word damos comes the verb damazo. Do you know what damazo means? I paid. What do we pay in marriage? Huh? No. We tame our ego, our pride, so that we become humble. When we become humble, then we get to know ourselves and the other. The proud person, the person who has ego, will never get to know themselves, nor they get to know the others, their partners. Okay? A marriage that has proud partners will not last. Will not last. Okay? Because one of them, if one is proud and egotist, will abuse the other. And that marriage will not last. Unless the other person is a holy person and endures to the end, and he is crowned as an athlete. Okay? So, the word. Okay. So, if we have problems in our marriages, the language itself, it tells us what to do and how to manage ourselves and our relationship. We don't need to go to psychologists, because immediately if you go to them, they will propose a divorce. It's very easy for them. You become statistics. Okay? You become statistics. No problem for them. Problem is for you. They don't care about it. After you leave their office, they will forget about it. You are not very concerned. Nor you, nor your children. So the language itself, it tells you how to manage your lives. Okay? But you have to know. You have to have knowledge. Acquire knowledge. Knowledge is power and liberates you. Ignorance is weakness and enslaves you. Acquire knowledge. Love knowledge. You can't progress without acquiring knowledge. Okay? So, this is it. Questions? No questions? When I became a deacon 38 years ago, I went to Greece to apply my residence. And in my township, I met one of my teachers. She was doing French class. And we were in company, classmates. And she said to us, why don't you come, you're wasting your time, now you work, you have free time. Come again into the the school and we continued with French. And we went. So when I went, 38 years ago back to my country, I met her. She says, how are you? And she saw me with a robe and says, I'm here. She says, yes. She says, why don't you come to my class? She left her primary school. Year 4 and 5. And so I went and I sat for the lesson. Yeah. And after that, she introduced me, but I was one of the students. And she said, if you like to ask anything about the priest, you can do it. So let's start asking questions. And I noticed in their eyes, they were very smart kids. Very smart kids. They would ask questions, very hard questions. Okay? Anyway, that passed. I came to Australia then. I became a priest. I was appointed to Salisbury. And about 3-4 years after my appointment, I was invited by the principal of Salisbury High School to speak to the students here, 11 and 12 students. It was after our Easter, immediately after our Easter, when the schools resumed. So I went there and they gathered both classrooms, here 11 in one big room, and the teachers were standing in one corner, and I was asking questions to the students. And I said, can you tell me what is Easter? No one. What is Easter? After 3 and 4 attempts, one girl dives her hand into her bag, takes a big chocolate egg, that big, and says, this is Easter. I thought, oh, my. These guys, they have empty heads. So I broke the word Easter and made it more simple, like they were little kids, primary school kids. And I said, what is East? What is East? No answer. They didn't know what is East. Okay? And I said to them, when I was in kindergarten, the first word that the teacher told us, it was about the East. And said, the sun rises from the East. So East is a point of the horizon where the sun rises. One said of the students, the opposite of west. Okay? Is that the definition? East is the opposite of west, and what is west? The opposite of east. And we go, here and go, bang, 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 bang. This is not the definition. Year 11 and year 12, they could not give a definition. And I was looking at the teachers. They were standing there like this. And I thought, you're lucky guys. You're lucky. You have students. You can ask questions. So why don't you ask questions? Huh? Don't be shy. Ask questions. Ask. By asking, you learn. Okay? Think. Make your mind think deeply, critically. Okay? Seek not the law. Challenge me.
I have a question.
Yes.
So, since Jesus does not, the word of God does not support divorce, right? Why does a church allow for divorce to happen, people to get married and then get divorced and then get, like I know people that were divorced and married multiple times.
Up to 3 times. Up to 3 times.
Why is that allowed? And so many times.
Okay.
Like, wouldn't you think that
doesn't allow divorce at all. At all. Why? Why? Because of the literal translation and interpretation of these two verses. Of the literal. Without examining what was behind it. Okay? The Orthodox Church, up to the 6th century, didn't give divorce. It was strict, no divorce. What was the result? Tell me if someone, if there are problems, mighty problems, in a family. And the woman is in danger of being killed by a violent husband. What would the church do? Is it better to have murder, killing, enemy, and not give divorce rather than save the life and give divorce? What would be better? If you are a judge, how would you do that? Huh?
And the children too.
And the children. But there is another case of giving divorce. As Christ says, for sexual immorality. Now, this sexual immorality is the translation of the word porneia. What does that mean? What is porneia? Huh? Fornication. What is fornication? Legally, what is fornication? Huh? Say it loudly. No, the act of sexual intercourse can happen in marriage and it's not fornication. It's sexual relationships outside the marriage, before marriage. Before marriage. Okay? Why Christ says fornication and doesn't say adultery? If it is adultery, which is cheating in marriage, of course there will be, divorce. It doesn't need to say, because already the law said it. It doesn't need to repeat what the law said, because it's already said. But he said fornication. He distinguished it from adultery. Why? Why?
You can divorce.
Okay, if someone, listen how it is, it's the more we dive in, the more things we understand. And the more things we understand about finally of the divorce. Let's say someone got married, and back then, the husband would not know his wife. Okay? You know how they were dressed? Women? Buddha. Okay? Here, you wouldn't see even the face of the woman that you married. First time you married. First time you met her. You didn't know what you're getting. Probably you would think, okay, she's about 23 years of age, but finally you get a 40 years of age. You know? Because you wouldn't see it. You wouldn't see her. There were proxies back then. Okay? I agreed with Irini that our children would marry while they were little ones. And they grew. Back then, marriages were taking place very early ages, 14, 16 years of age. They were playing with dolls. They didn't know anything. So the boy would see his bride the first night of the marriage. They were not financially independent. That's very important, right? They were not financially independent. Most of them, when they were very, very young. And this happens even today in some countries of Southeast Asia.
and other countries, Muslim countries, mostly. And if they married in an age and they were not financially independent, they would live in the in-laws' house. Okay? Until they would, the husband would become financially independent and move his family to his own house. Okay? But let's say they married. Okay? And the first night of their marriage, when they consumed their marriage, the husband found his wife not virgin, a virgin. Which means what? She was a fornicator. And immediately he had the right to take the divorce. Right? For fornication reasons. Not adultery. Christ didn't speak about adultery because already the law defined that. He didn't need to repeat it. Okay? That's why he said fornication. Okay? But there was a problem. The fornication of the woman was obvious. The fornication of man is not obvious. Injustice. Okay? But God knows. You are my father. You are the same. You are the same. No, doesn't say that. But he left it to the legislators of Israel to do that. He left it to them. They legislated. The Pharisees were the legislators. Αυτός τους έβαλε να... Αυτοί ήταν οι νομοθέτες του Ισραήλ. Εντάξει. Αυτοί κάνανε τους νόμους του Ισραήλ. Ο Χριστός δεν έκανε challenge αυτά που γράψανε στους νόμους. Το παραδέχεται. Και τα δέχεται. Κατάλαβες, γι' αυτό είπε επικαθένας. Αυτός είναι ο λόγος που μίλησε εδώ σε αυτή την περίπτωση. Όχι σε όλες τις περιπτώσεις. Εντάξει. Είπε για τη σκληροκαρδία σας επέτρεψε ο Μωυσής στο πλαίσιο. Εφόσον υπάρχει σκληροκαρδία, δεν το πλαίσιο. Υπάρχει. Αν δεν υπάρχει σκληροκαρδία και όλα είναι εντάξει, δεν υπάρχει. Υπάρχει όμως.
Δεν θα την κάνει να χωρίσει.
Είναι ίσως.
When a couple wants to divorce, if the priest recommend them to go somewhere within their religion or a believer to go and try to correct their mistakes.
They should come to the spiritual father and seek advice. And the spiritual father or the priest has to make efforts in order to reconcile their differences. Because why? Why? You know, sometimes we take emotional decisions right in the spot, okay? Because of anger, anxiety, and all these psychological complexes, okay? We all suffer. And we react. Emotions react. Rational puts things in order and in perspective. We don't think rationally. We are not calm. Okay? We are volatile. When someone is volatile and angry in the differences that between the husband and the wife, either the wife or the husband, we lack patience. Patience. Okay? And rational, critical thinking. We lack this. We didn't learn from little ones as we grew. We were not trained to think rationally. We were that's why we have so many problems in life. Okay? Because there is no logic to examine the situation. That's why we need someone who is outside, who is cool, calm, and collected, put things in perspective and in order, and try to resolve the situation. Calm down. Diffuse the situation. Okay? Two partners in marriage who are angry are not going to resolve anything. Nothing. Nothing. And the lawyers thrive on this. They thrive on this. They thrive on this. From my experience, you know, so many divorces of parishioners that I had in Adelaide. There were two sisters. For one, the divorce cost 300,000, and the other 350,000. Lasted years. Lasted years. The divorce of my parents lasted 7 years. Do you know how much money my parents spent? Right? In today's money, about 10 billion. In today's money. Because there were, you know, 7 years. 7 years. 7 years. Legal battles in 7 years. Then how much it cost? Millions. Millions. Don't underestimate it. Don't underestimate it. Better sit down and talk. Civilized. In a civil way. Talk. Talk. Negotiate. Even if you think, I'm losing this, don't worry about this. But then, you win. Don't worry. So there are many, many, many reasons for a couple to split.
When you divorce, there's no rational.
I will refrain to answer this. Anyway, there are many reasons for it. It's not only sexual immorality or cheating or temptation or whatever. Many reasons. Okay? When Christ spoke about sexual immorality, he left every other case to those who he gave them legislative power, legislate all the details. Okay? And the Pharisees did very good work. They did very good work. They legislated very good things in the people of Israel. And many of these laws we have today. You know that? Many of these laws we have today. We apply them today. But there is no just one reason for the divorce. There are many reasons. Many reasons. You don't know because you don't get, you know, all the cases. You know? We see it every day. We see it every day. And we hear every day different stories. So many stories. I can write a book. I was in Cardinals, and I was with a metropolitan in his office. We were sitting, and he brought some ice cream, he gave ice cream. And Father Salas came and said to him, with a piece of paper, said to him, sign it. Says, what is it? A divorce. Again, divorce. Again, what is this? You know, I'm very sad. It's what happened. He said, she cheated. She called him with another man. consequences come after. The aftermath is worse than the beforemath. Especially when you are children. I know what experience. Marriage is the union of development and improvement, which really endurance, respect. If there is no humility and respect and trust, there is no marriage. There is no marriage. Okay? The thing that we say, I love you. What does that mean? What does that mean? I love you. What does that mean? What does that mean? Where is the substance? Where is the substance? Love is substance. What is this substance? Love is many things. It's not. I love you how I love. What do I love? What do I love? I love you now that you are young, beautiful, and something happens, and your youth and your beauty vanishes clean away. Do I love you still? Do I still love you? Yes, you are? Yeah? Sure. Sure is different from reality. So what is love? Christ, Apostle Paul speaks about love in Ephesians 5th chapter 20:33. Okay? When you go home, read. Ephesians 5th chapter 20:33. This is the pericope that we read during the marriage ceremony. And for those who are going to marry, pay attention. Pay attention what he says. Okay? Now, yes.
Not to the reflection of a union of heart and the
Bravo! You can hear. You can hear. You listen. See? The little one. We are ready for marriage. Okay. Next Tuesday, what do you think? Shall we speak about marriage, engagement, and marriage? So you see how things originate. Okay? How things originate. Because our relationship with Christ is a marital relationship. It's a relationship of marriage. Okay? And our marriage in us is a reflection with the marriage of Christ and His church. And I will try to explain you from engagement what happens until the marriage from a Jewish perspective, because everything we do is Jewish, that ends up in the Revelation 21st chapter, when there is a marriage of the Lamb with His church. Okay? And you will see almost the interpretation of the New Testament.